Welcome. I'm so glad to be here. I am so thrilled to follow Stephen and Shasta. And can I tell you, I subscribe to the Future Crunch newsletter, and it is awesome. And you should absolutely subscribe immediately after my talk. Don't do it while I'm talking. My job, I feel, is to put a little bit in context some of the stuff you've been hearing about in terms of technological change. I heard the gentleman from TSB, when he was introducing Stephen and Shasta, talk about exponential technologies. I know you guys have heard a bit about AI and blockchain and cryptocurrency and stuff like that over the past 2 days. My job is to kind of put in context, how are these things actually things? Like, how is it possible that this stuff is happening? What's really going on to make all these things possible? But before I get into that, I just want to say that I am a Kiwi. I flew up a few hours ago from my home in Christchurch. I've been here for more than 13 years. I became a citizen in 2013. This is absolutely my home. And I think it's important to stress that because I know you can tell from my accent that I'm not from here originally, and the alternative is a little embarrassing just at present. Like, I know as soon as I say that I'm from America, what everybody's thinking, which is, what the heck is going on over there? And I bring this up not to make a political point, like there might be people in this room who are Trump supporters. It's none of my business, although we should talk. But more because it's just so surprising that he's the president. Like, it's been a year and a half, and it's still so weird. Like, that's the guy? Really? And that's not mean. He was surprised when he got in. Like, everybody was surprised by this. Every poll, every pundit, every editorial, like, everybody had this thing going the other way. Nate Silver, the guru statistician who rose to fame in the 2012 election for correctly anticipating every one of the 50 states, the morning of the 2016 election, this is how he had it pegged. 71% Clinton, 28% Trump. Everybody got this wrong, except for this fish. Oops, back up. Hang on. This is the best way to give a joke, is to back up and redo it. Except for this fish, which correctly ate off of a picture of Donald Trump instead of one of Hillary Clinton. And this artificially intelligent predictive system, which correctly anticipated the results of the election weeks out. So this is the kind of thing that's interesting to me. How is it possible that the humans are getting it so wrong and the computers are getting it so right? So a few years ago, I got connected with a group called Singularity University. They're based in Silicon Valley, housed at the NASA Ames Research Center, and they were founded by these two guys. And these guys are really kind of titans of the tech world. The guy on the right is Peter Diamandis. Peter started X Prize Foundation. He started International Space University. He started a company called Human Longevity, Inc. with J. Craig Venter, the guy who decoded the genome. He started a company called Planetary Resources, which is mining asteroids. He's a tremendously accomplished guy, but the guy on the left is even more relevant to this afternoon's conversation. His name is Ray Kurzweil, and he invented everything. He invented flatbed scanners, he invented optical character recognition, he invented text-to-speech for blind people, he invented the Kurzweil synthesizer. He's got 21 honorary doctorates. He's received honors. Did I just lose my... He's received honors from 3 US presidents. He's written 7 books, 5 of them bestsellers. He's a director of engineering at Google, like total underachiever. But one of the most interesting things about Ray is that they've gone back and looked at the predictions he's made about where technology is going since the late 80s, early 90s, and they found that he has an astonishing 86% accuracy rate. 86%. It's a tremendous achievement. If you think about some of the dramatic technological changes we've seen and we've been talking about over the past 2 days, 86% is really quite extraordinary. To the degree that he predicted that by 1998, a computer would beat a human at chess. And of course, in 1997, IBM's Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov. To that level of specificity. So when Ray Kurzweil says something about where technology is going, generally worth paying attention to him. So these two guys got together in 2008 or so. They made some observations about where technology is going. They made some further observations about our collective inability to really grasp this stuff. And they decided to start Singularity University to help people better understand these things so that we can make more intelligent choices about the kind of future we're creating. So I first got involved with them, like I said, about 3.5 years ago. I did their executive program. It's a 6-day program at their headquarters at NASA Ames. And I'll tell you what, I went there with my TEDx hat on. And my job as the curator of a TEDx event is to be across new innovation. It's to pay attention to the kind of stuff that was in the first slide that Stephen and Shasta showed, right? It's to be kind of aware of what is up and coming, because that's the kind of stuff I need to put on my stage. And so when I went to SU, we call it Singularity University, when I went to SU, I thought this is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to see what I learn. I did not expect it to completely transform my understanding of the nature of technological progress, and completely overwhelm my sense of how tremendous the impact of this is on every single one of us and on every aspect of our lives. This stuff affects not only our economy, but our government, our healthcare system, our education system, our kids' kids. Everything about the way that we live, work, and play gets touched by this, and not enough of us understand it. Not enough of us are talking about it. And so I ended up shifting pretty much the entire trajectory of my career to helping more people understand this stuff so that we could do a better job at creating the kind of we want. So my job over the next 16 minutes and 48 seconds is to boil down everything that I learned in those 6 days into 3 core insights. And the first one starts with this guy. So this is Gordon Moore. He's one of the co-founders of Intel Corporation, and in 1965, he made the observation that the number of transistors we could fit on an integrated circuit had been doubling every 18 months as far back as we could see. And he made a prediction that that number would continue to double as far forward as we could see. This became known as Moore's Law. You've probably heard of it. So the first insight comes from Ray Kurzweil, he of the 86% accuracy rate. And what Kurzweil said was, hang on a minute, what if it's not actually about the transistors at all? So fun fact you may not know about Moore's Law. Gordon Moore made his famous prediction based on a data set of 4. He had 4 data points. But Kurzweil zoomed out on Moore's Law. He said, what if, instead of looking at the number of transistors we can fit on an integrated circuit, we look instead at what we might call the price performance of computing? How many million instructions per second can you buy for $1,000? Turns out that number has been doubling for almost 120 years. Starting way back with the beginning of computing with electromechanical punch cards, moving on to relays, and then vacuum tubes, and then transistors, and only then integrated circuits. Moore's Law is actually the 5th iteration of this underlying doubling paradigm, not the first. Kurzweil called it the law of accelerating returns. Here's a way to think about it. Today, for $1,000, you can buy roughly the number of instructions per second that a mouse brain can process. But according to Kurzweil, by about 2023, 5 years from now, for $1,000, you'll be able to buy the number of instructions per second that a human brain can process. And by 2049, for $1,000, you'll be able to buy the number of instructions per second of all human brains on the planet combined. This doubling curve explains why you today, via the smartphone in your pocket, have access to more information than Bill Clinton had the entire time that he was president of the United States. I reckon that's why he looked kind of pissed off in this picture. Wish I had an iPhone. Although I'm sure he's super glad Instagram was not a thing when he was around. Right. Insight number 1, not just about the transistors. It's about the price performance of computing. Insight number 2 is that it's not just about computing. This doubling phenomenon applies to any technology once it becomes what we call information enabled. Think about something like photography. Photography used to be substrate enabled. It was dependent on the physical film for you to do the thing. And then it became information enabled, dependent instead on ones and zeros. And once that happened, it started to follow a doubling in price performance, much like computing. The first digital camera had a resolution of 0.01 megapixel. Today, you can get a 41 megapixel camera as part of a smartphone. So some of the technologies that have become information enabled and that are now starting to follow doubling curves, computing, obviously the base one, but also artificial intelligence, robotics, biotechnology, nanotechnology, gene sequencing, neuroscience, energy, all becoming powered by information, powered by ones and zeros, and all starting to follow similar doubling curves. So what is so important about a doubling curve? Why should we even care? Well, it turns out they have a few characteristics that make them actually kind of imperative to pay attention to. And the first one is that they look flat for a really long time. And you'll know this if you've ever tried to do that trick where you fold a piece of paper in half 8 times. Anybody ever try that trick? First fold is easy, second fold is easy, third fold is easy, 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 easy. You're like, this trick is so dumb. Why am I even doing it? So easy. And it's not until you hit that 6th, 7th, 8th fold of the paper that things start to get a little crazy. And so as a result, these curves are inherently deceptive. They look for a long time like nothing is happening while the technology is going from 0.01 to 0.02 to 0.04 to 0.08. I mean, sure, it's doubling, but from the outside, it still effectively looks like 0. The second characteristic is that our brains are totally not wired for this stuff. We evolved on the savannah chasing prey and running from predators that behaved in a predictable, linear fashion. We evolved to understand that a lion could run from that end of the room to that end of the room, not to understand that a lion could run from that end of the room to the moon. And so as a result, the experts continue to predict linear, no matter how much evidence we have to the contrary. Gordon Moore himself, twice, said that Moore's law was over. Both times proven wrong. Like the guy who invented the law. He can't get his own law right. So I don't know what hope the rest of us have. But the difference between something following a linear trajectory and something following a doubling curve is insane. 30 linear steps, and we're back out at registration. 30 doubling steps, and we're 26 times around the planet. And the tricky thing here is that you're not halfway until the 29th step. So it's really hard to measure progress as you go. I don't think there's a single person in this room, myself included, who could correctly guess where we would be at step 15 of this process. Our brains do not work this way. And so when we see doubling curves in action, we have to be systematic and disciplined in our assessment and our analysis of them if we want to have a hope of being able to respond effectively. When I first came back from SU, I started giving these talks, and I would always include some whiz-bangy technology, like, oh my gosh, can you believe this technology is already here? Isn't that incredible? That is not what I want you to take away from my talk. What I want you to take away from my talk is not about what technology is available at any given point in time. The critical message I want you to take away from my talk is about how technology changes over time. And now that I've been doing this for a while, I've had kind of a front row seat to see what this looks like, and I want to walk you through it using just one example, which is autonomous vehicles. So I come back from SU in March of 2015. I start giving these talks, and at that time, most people sort of knew that Google had a self-driving car project on the go. In terms of, public awareness of self-driving vehicles, that's pretty much where we were at. In June of that year, June 2015, Google's self-driving car program hit 1 million miles traveled total. That was a huge accomplishment, a huge milestone, both literally and figuratively. In October that year, October 2015, Tesla released a push update to owners of their Model S vehicle. This is a Tesla Model S. Push update, meaning it was delivered overnight wirelessly while you slept, didn't have to do anything to get it. You woke up in the morning and your car had autopilot functionality. And by May the following year, less than a year after Google had logged 1 million miles traveled total, Tesla was collecting 1 million miles of data every 10 hours. By December that year, they had logged more than 1.3 billion miles worth of data. When we hit that inflection point, that 6th, 7th, 8th fold of the paper, we go from nothing into everything seemingly overnight. And what I don't want is for you to be left saying, it came out of nowhere. There's no way we could have known. In December that year, December 2016, in Christchurch, where I live, the airport took possession of a self-driving shuttle. This is it from a French company called Navia in partnership with a Kiwi company called HMI. A couple of months after they took possession of the shuttle, I caught up with Malcolm Johns, the chief executive of the airport. I'm like, Malcolm, what's going on with the shuttle? Is it working? Is it good? Are you using it? Tell me what's happening. And he goes, Kaila, the shuttle's awesome. The technology works perfectly. We love it. Autonomous vehicles are absolutely a thing, and they're here. He says, you wouldn't believe what the actual hurdles to adoption are for this technology. For example, in New Zealand, we have no law that says that you have to have a human behind the wheel of your vehicle. Not because we're particularly forward-thinking, largely because we never fathomed that you could ever not have a human behind the wheel of your vehicle. There is a law that says that you have to have a rego in your front windscreen. So this is an electric vehicle. It's got an electric drivetrain, goes equally in either direction. Doesn't really distinguish between front and back. It effectively has 2 fronts. And you're not allowed to have 2 regos. Again, I don't think the people who came up with this rule were trying to be obstructive when they came up with it. They just never contemplated this scenario. So when you think about what has to happen for a technology to become ubiquitous, it's not enough that the technology is ready. The regulatory environment has to be ready. The market appetite has to be ready. The investment environment has to be ready. And when all of those things come together, that's when every flag, bell, and whistle should start to go off for you, that a technology is about to hit that inflection point and go from deception into chaos and amazement, and you want to be there first. All right, insight number 1, not just about the transistors, it's about the price performance of computing. Insight number 2, not just about computing, it's about any information-enabled technology. Insight number 3 is that these technologies are now starting to converge. So now we have to consider what happens when an exponential progression in something like artificial intelligence converges with an exponential progression in robotics. And we get super intelligent robots. What happens when an exponential progression in biotechnology or bioengineering converges with an exponential progression in 3D printing at the molecular or even atomic level, when we can literally print matter atom by atom? And of course, what happens is that everything accelerates even faster. What does all of this add up to? Huge opportunity. Opportunity like nothing we've seen before in human history. And certainly Stephen and Shasta touched on that, and I will touch on that a little bit more myself. But that opportunity comes along, hello amygdala, with a not insignificant amount of terror. I stay up at night a lot worrying about the future. I have a very active amygdala, and I kind of feel like if I'm up at night, you guys should be too. So misery loves company, sorry. But I'm just going to share with you just 4 of the things that keep me awake at night and keep me nervous. The first one is technological unemployment, the robot apocalypse, the computers taking all the jobs. You've probably heard this stat, this now famous paper from Frey and Osborne in 2013, 47 to 81% of jobs under threat from technology within 20 years. In New Zealand, you might have seen this stat as well from the Chartered Accountants of Australia and New Zealand, 46% of Kiwi jobs within 20 years. I'll tell you what, this is the kind of topic that we can stay up, all of us, we can stay up until 3 in the morning talking about over whiskey. There are as many opinions on this as there are atoms in the universe. There are papers, as many papers saying that the jobs are all going to go away as there are papers saying there are going to be new jobs created. It's a very complex and nuanced topic. And what I can tell you is that as of right now today, in aggregate, we are not seeing increased unemployment from technology. That is not yet visible to anyone, if it ends up happening at all. What we are seeing as of right now today is increased inequality as a result of technology. We've been seeing this since the mid-70s. This is from the Brookings Institute. They just published a study demonstrating that absolutely wealth is flowing more towards the holders of capital and away from labor. And again, as I said, this has been happening since the mid-70s, when for the first time in human history, we were able to decouple productivity growth from wage growth. And of course, the thing that's concerning to me here is that this means we have a situation where politicians can get on stage and say everything is awesome. GDP is high, unemployment's low, we're doing a great job. And yet for a huge chunk of the population, everything is very much not awesome. My wages are stagnant, or they've declined in relative terms, or even in absolute terms, right? I am not experiencing this economic boom of which you speak. And what happens when you have this disconnect between the high-level narrative and the lived reality for so many people is that you get people like Trump. But not just Trump. You get Sanders. You get Brexit. You get, to a degree, you get Jacinda. Like, they're all kind of manifestations of the same core underlying phenomenon, which is the system is not working for me. The third thing that keeps you up at night is increased cyber risk. And of course, in the financial sector, you guys know this better than anyone. Bank of America spending close to $1 billion Kiwi in cybersecurity. JP Morgan Chase spending $500 million US in cybersecurity. And the reason this is becoming such a huge issue is because when everything is connected, everything is vulnerable. And when I say everything is connected, I mean we've got connected light bulbs, connected fridges, connected cups. Recently, there was a hack in a Las Vegas casino. They stole a high roller database. They got in through a connected fish tank in the lobby. But the fourth thing is the thing that keeps me up at night the most. It's the undermining of trust in our civil society. And I'm not just talking about things like filter bubbles, although these are absolutely critical, and I endorse the comments made earlier about these. I'm not just talking about Cambridge Analytica influencing elections or things like that. I'm talking about something potentially more insidious. If you've seen this video before, you probably don't want to admit it. This is the face of Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot, superimposed onto the body of a porn star. This video was uploaded to a website called Step Siblings Caught, purporting to show her having sex with her stepbrother. This video was created using a technology called deep fakes, which is a technology that allows you to take someone's face and superimpose it onto someone else's body. When this technology first came out, you needed a reasonable level of technical expertise in order to make a video like this. But of course, within about 10 minutes, somebody had made a user-friendly version of it. So now anyone can go online and create a video of someone's face on someone else's body. And that can be fun. You can make a video of your partner or loved one starring in the Avengers, right? That can be cool, but you can also use this for malicious purposes. Combine this with technology we now have that allows you to use your face as a remote control for someone else's face. So this guy on the right is using his face to control the face of Donald Trump in the video. He smiles, Trump smiles. He frowns, Trump frowns. Combine that with technology we now have that allows you to generate convincing audio in anyone's voice, and we get a situation like this one. So that's the terror, but Shasta touched on this. F. Scott Fitzgerald said, the mark of a first-rate mind is the ability to hold two opposing thoughts simultaneously and still retain the ability to function. And what those guys said about how great the world is getting is absolutely true by many metrics. 2017 was the best year ever in human history. In 2017, the smallest share of our population ever was hungry, impoverished, or illiterate. In 2017, during that year, the number of people coming out of extreme poverty was 217,000 every single day. Every single day in 2017, 325,000 people gained access to electricity, and every single day in 2017, 300,000 people gained access to clean drinking water. I'm almost out of time, so I just want to tell you a quick story, because when I went to SU, I heard about a lot of technologies that I had already heard about. And you guys have heard about a lot of technologies already. You've heard about AI, you've heard about blockchain, you've heard about crypto, you've heard about these things. The thing that was so mind-blowing for me was not so much, I'm just going to switch to this handheld. The thing that was so mind-blowing for me, let's see, we're good? We're good? Awesome, thank you. The thing that was so mind-blowing for me was not so much any one technology. I'd heard about most of these technologies before. What SU did for me was it took all of those disparate, independent technologies and pulled them together into a new, coherent narrative that made me go, oh my gosh, like I see this in a way that I completely did not see it before. And I want to share with you one of those moments using an example, which is 3D printing. So when I went to SU, I had definitely heard about 3D printing before. I did not know until I went there that 3D printing has been around for over 35 years, probably close to 40 years now. That was news to me. And the reason it was news to me is because everyone I had ever spoken to about 3D printing was like, oh my gosh, it's going to revolutionize everything. And what have we actually gotten? Shitty models of Yoda's head. Like, this is not revolutionary, right? There is no incumbent Yoda's head model industry that's freaking out right now because the MakerBots are coming. But so I leave SU with this new paradigm, this new coherent narrative, and a week after going to SU, I went to TED, and at TED, this guy, Joseph DeSimone, got up on stage, and he was like, 3D printing is terrible. This is terrible. And the reason it's so terrible is that it's not actually 3D printing, right? It's 2D printing over and over again. You print a layer, and another layer, and another layer, and another layer. And so as a result, there are all sorts of problems with it. You can't really do bridges, you can't do spans, you can't do objects within objects. The mechanical tolerances are terrible, the structural integrity is terrible, it's super slow, and it's super expensive. So DeSimone's like, I don't want a 3D printer that's a 2D printer over and over again. I want a 3D printer that works more like the T-1000 from Terminator 2. I want my object to just emerge from the soup, fully formed. I want it to just be the thing. And so he built it. This is it. That's what he was there to launch. It's called CLIP, Continuous Liquid Interface Production. That plate at the top pulls the object fully formed from this tray of substrate soup at the bottom. It solves every issue with current 3D printing. You can do bridges, you can do spans, you can do objects within objects. The mechanical tolerances are perfect. The structural integrity is perfect. It's 25 to 100 times faster than current 3D printing technology. So I watch him give this talk, fresh from SU, with my new coherent narrative. And I had 3 reactions. And my first reaction was what it would have been anyway, which was like, whoa, that's really cool. Nice work, dude. But my second reaction was, of course, it's 25 to 100 times faster and not, 7% faster. Of course, as DeSimone says, the next iteration is going to be 1,000 times faster because that's what an exponential curve looks like. And my third reaction was, now I get it. Now I get how 3D printing totally disrupts global manufacturing and freight. Because why would you ever pay to manufacture 20,000 of something in China and pay to ship it and pay to store it and have waste and have loss and have theft and have it go out of date when you literally can push the button and get the thing? We cannot use the past as a means of predicting the future. This past November, researchers at the Lawrence Livermore Lab came out with a new 3D printing technique that prints complete 3D objects using light in seconds. In seconds. ING is projecting that 40% of global trade will be wiped out, their words, not mine, wiped out as a result of 3D printing by 2040. What does all of this mean for you? I think that, as Stephen and Shasta said, we have a tendency to think about what are the scary implications of any of these technologies. So we think about things like, what if my job gets automated? Or what if my business gets automated? Or even worse, what if my whole industry gets automated? And there's a very good chance that it will. This is one of my favorite slides. I'm going to build on some of the stuff those guys were talking about clean energy. This is one of my favorite slides. This slide is called Welcome to the Terradome, this chart. I didn't give it that name. This is a very happy chart for me. The name Welcome to the Terradome was given to this chart by the guys who created it. That's the good folks at the Energy Information Administration, the World Bank, the CIA. And these guys came up with this chart. And what they're looking at is the price performance of energy by different fuel types. So remember we talked before, price performance, right? When it was computing, it was how many million instructions per second for $1,000. These price performance charts, they're all saying the same thing. How much performance can you get for a fixed price, or how much is price coming down for a fixed level of performance? So what we've got here on the y-axis, we've got the price per million BTUs. On the x-axis, we've got the year. We're starting in 1949. We're mapping 5 different fuel types, and starting in 1949, 4 of them bump along the bottom. They bump along. They bump along, they go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. Over time, they gradually trend upwards. Those are our linear technologies. Those are our fossil fuels. And that's what linear technologies do in terms of price performance. The price goes up and down, and over time gradually trends upwards. Inflation, cost of living, et cetera. And what happens over here? It doesn't even come onto the chart until like 2007. And when it comes onto the chart, it's so expensive that all the incumbents are like, it's never going to be a thing. We never need to worry about it. And then the price plummets. That's solar. Solar is information-enabled energy. Solar is doubling in price performance much faster than Moore's Law. In 2017, for the first time ever, in certain parts of the world, it became cheaper to build and operate a new solar plant than it was to maintain an existing coal plant. Think about that for a second. Cheaper to build new than maintain existing. All of the sunk cost arguments go completely out the window. 2 weeks ago, we hit a new solar record in the US, just over 2 cents per kilowatt hour. The average cost for unsubsidized coal energy is 12 cents per kilowatt hour. And the super exciting thing there is that what happens when the right thing to do for the planet aligns with the right thing to do for your bottom line? Wholesale transformation. When I was prepping for this talk, you guys sent me a whole bunch of data, and included in that data was a big document about the state of the New Zealand payments landscape. It was a 26-page document. It didn't reference the blockchain once. I did a find function on it. And what I can tell you is that regardless of what you think about these technologies, regardless of what you think about AI, regardless of what you think about blockchain, regardless of what you think about crypto, if you are not thinking about them now, and actively planning for how you can incorporate them into the work that you do, then you will be too late. And the most important thing is to be asking the right question. So often the question that we ask is, how are we going to be disrupted? That is absolutely the wrong question. The question we need to be asking is, how can we leverage these technologies? And not just how can we leverage these technologies, but how can we leverage these technologies to make the world a better place? Thank you.